Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Susan Lay, and this is Technically Speaking. Thanks for dropping by. We're still on the topic of narcissist or narcissistic abuse. This abuse can be from a psychopath, a sociopath. Narcissist seems like they all got dropped off from the same planet because they have the same patterns. Now, none of them would like to know that they're anything like anybody else, but they are from planet Narco, I think is what we refer to it as. If you have unresolved feelings of sadness, depression, isolation, or if you're just trying to figure out what the hell has gone on in your life for you not to feel happy and joyous and comfortable in your skin as to who you are, please consider some of this information I'm getting ready to share with you about if possibly you've been traumatized by narcissistic abuse. Narcissist personality disorder is prevalent in many family structures. We could also speak of whether it be addictions or anything else that come along and disrupt a family unit where there's scapegoating, meaning that they're blaming somebody else for something. There's a lot of codependency going on where you see, and I've witnessed that all my life, where the woman's totally catering to the male or the male authority figure. I also seen it in the reverse, where the male is totally trying to keep the woman happy because she's always a tyrant. If you see someone going around and excessively stomping their feet and expecting everybody to jump, I would challenge you to look at some personality disorders going on. So I'm going to just read through this document I'd run across here. 11 signs you're a victim of narcissistic abuse. This is by, who is this by? It's called Thought Catalog. Shahida Arabi, and she had posted it here on October 5th, 2018. Pretty recent. Alright, so let's imagine this. Your entire reality has been warped and distorted. You have been mercilessly violated, manipulated, lied to, ridiculed, demeaned, and gaslighted into believing you are imagining things. You ever been dismissed a lot? The person you thought you knew and the life you built together has been shattered into a million little fragments. If you really do some deep soul searching, you may find yourself to this place. Your sense of self has been eroded, diminished. You are idealized and then devalued. I'm like narc bait. So initially, folks will come up to me and put on a facade as having all their shit together and they're poop in a group. And then when you peel back the layers of that, or if you get a little too close to realizing that they aren't everything that they have marketed themselves to be, they'll start devaluing you and putting you down as a result of that because you've gotten a little too close to their insecurities. But anyway, so yeah, if your sense of self-worth has been eroded, diminished, you were idealized and then devalued and then shoved off the pedestal. So one day, this person was crazy about you, and the next moment, you can't even walk a straight line because you can't walk, you can't think, so they're pushing off on all the shit that is really going on in their head onto you. Perhaps you were even replaced and discarded multiple times and only to be hoovered and lured back into an abuse cycle more torturous than before. Maybe you were relentlessly stalked, harassed, and bullied to stay with your abuser. Now, I'm going to take this in a twofold process for the fact that we can be the child of a family unit where you have no control over these things, or you can be an adult where you do have a choice and a decision to make to whether you stay or you go. But this seems like she doesn't preface this at all, but it it looks like she's taking the adult view on this. I'm going to go back and pick up some of the child view on it as well. All right, so this person is coming into your life. They swooped you off your feet. They were a knight in shining armor, or they were the chick of your dreams. And they were all that and a bag of chips. And then all of a sudden, you were the shit. You know, you were the one that entered the relationship with all your stuff together. And then before you know it, they slowly, methodically picked you apart to where you were just a freaking mess. And then they throw you out like yesterday's trash. And so this was no normal breakup or of a relationship. It was a setup for a covert, insidious murder of your psyche and your sense of safety in the world. Yet there may not be visible scars to tell you all you have are broken pieces, fractured memories, and internal battle wounds. If you've not encountered this, lucky you. Lucky you. Because they are around. These types of individuals, this is their, that's their modus operandi right there. This is what narcissistic abuse looks like. Psychological violence by a malignant narcissist can include verbal and emotional abuse, toxic projection, stonewalling, sabotage, smear campaigns, triangulation, along with a plethora of other forms of coercion and control. This is imposed by someone who lacks empathy, demonstrates an excessive sense of entitlement, and engages in interpersonal exploitation to meet their own needs at the expense of the rights of others. Yeah, stomp right on over you. As a result of this chronic abuse, victims may struggle with symptoms of PTSD or complex PTSD. If they had additional traumas like being abused by narcissistic parents, or even what is known as narcissistic abuse syndrome, which is referred to as STAGS in 2016 and STALK in 2017, the aftermath of narcissistic abuse can include depression, anxiety, hypervigilance, a pervasive sense of toxic shame, emotional flashbacks, goodness, this must be triggering me, emotional flashbacks that regress the victim back to the abusive incidents, and overwhelming feelings of helplessness and worthlessness. So, yeah, she does kind of go back here in the childhood aspect of it there. When we are in the midst of an ongoing abuse cycle, it can be difficult to pinpoint exactly what we're experiencing because abusers are able to twist and turn reality to suit their own needs, engage in intense love bombing after abusive incidents, and convince their victims that they're the ones that are the abuser. So they provoke in an abusive way, you retaliate or come back, and then they go, aha, I knew it was you all along, you're like that. So that would be, if anybody's blaming you for some type of personality trait that you truly aren't, please don't let them convince you you are. So let's see, first thing, that was just the introduction. That's heavy, we're getting ready to get heavier. All right, 1, you experience disassociation as a survival mechanism. I'm having just lived life on planet Earth here. I've seen, as far as women go, that are rape victims will disassociate during that act, pretend they're not there. And I understand that too. I'm not a psychologist or any neurological scientist of any sort, but my understanding is that our brains will shut things off if we find them to be too traumatic to interpret. So this disassociation comes into play. You feel emotionally or physically detached from your environment, experiencing disruptions in your memory, perceptions, consciousness, and sense of self. Dr. Van der Kolk in 2015 writes in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, disassociation is the essence of trauma. The overwhelming experience is a split off and fragmented so that emotions, sounds, Images, thoughts, and physical sensations take on a life of their own. So take that for what it's worth, right? Disassociation can lead to emotional numbing in the face of horrific circumstances. Mind-numbing activities, obsessions, addictions, repression may become a way of life because they give an escape from the current reality. Your brain finds a way to emotionally block out the impact of pain so you don't have to deal with the full terror of the circumstances. So kind of lying to yourself. Essentially, you're making it not as bad as what it is. And gosh, since I've been awakened to this, I can speak with someone in a relatively short amount of time and see this. Denial. I'm going to call it a denial, whether they want to recognize it. Denial sounds a little bit like, what word am I looking for? Denial, like they're hedging or resistant. There's the word. Like they're resistant. But denial is actually, it's almost as if they don't want to know. Not going to go there, don't want to know, even though it's reality slapping them in the face. It's kind of like, well, don't you see the red flag? Don't you see this horrible thing going on right here? And they're going, well, that's not really that horrible of a thing. And they'll explain it away as it being something less than what it actually is. So this denial thing starts taking over. You may also develop traumatized inner parts that become disjointed from the personality you inhabit with your abuser or loved ones. Johnston, 2017. These inner parts can include the inner child parts that were never nurtured. The true anger and disgust you feel towards your abuser are parts of yourselves you cannot feel. You feel you cannot express around them. So what this invariably says is that as a kid, you will still have these unnurtured tendencies still show up in your adult life. And when you put on these personas as a child to get the nurturing that you needed, you will result to these things in adult life to get the things you need. According to the therapist, Reverend Sherry Heller, integrating, reclaiming disassociated and disowned aspects of the personality is largely dependent on constructing a cohesive narrative which allows for the assimilation of emotional, cognitive, and physiological realities. The inner integration is best done with the help of a trauma-informed therapist. I cannot say that any better than what it's stated there. If you're going to go down the trauma road and integrate the emotion you were supposed to have outwardly show during that abusive incident or incidents, be able to verbalize it cognitively and recognize it for what it was, and then have it resonate with your physiological self, looking at it to yourself. You really need a guided therapist to help you through that. I myself had I went through my own with a licensed therapist. Probably was as best as you could get in the field of narcissistic abuse in my area. Yet, there's more ground being uncovered every day. She stays on top as much as she possibly can. But I don't know that I would be anywhere I am today without her and other individuals being able to trust. That's a biggie, trust. So, yes, find a trusting therapist. If there's anything that I can say about this, is if you're going through or have been through or endured anything along this line, trust is a biggie. It's a big word. Not easy to come by. All right, number 2. We've gone a long way and we still got a long way to go. You walk on eggshells. A common symptom of trauma is avoiding anything that represents reliving that trauma, whether it be people, places, or activities that pose a threat. Whether it be your friend, your partner, your family member, coworker, boss, you find yourself constantly watching what you say or do around this person, lest you incur their wrath, punishment, or become an object of their envy. So I have downplayed myself in certain situations so people wouldn't latch on in that envious manner because, hypervigilant, if you would say. So yeah, I will discard parts of myself to weave around things. And as far as people getting angry, that's on them. I'm okay with, if they're going to get pissed off, that's theirs. Unless it lashes at me, then there's a boundary there. And as far as punishment goes, as a kid, punishment can come. As an adult, if you're in a relationship with one of these assholes, they will punish you. They will certainly punish you. Okay, and there's no way of working around it. If you're living with them and they're in your day-to-day, there's no way of... So you're just going to walk on eggshells and be the hypervigilant person that they've turned you into. It's all about control. So, however, if you find this does not work and you still become the abuser's target, whenever he or she feels entitled to use you as an emotional punching bag, you become perpetually anxious about provoking your abuser in any way and may avoid confrontation or setting boundaries as a result. So, yeah, you do all of the above. That's the best I can say. You do it, all of the above. You may also extend your people-pleasing behavior outside of abusive relationship, losing your ability to be spontaneous, assertive while navigating out in the outside world, especially with people who resemble or associated with your abuser and the abuse. When you become this if and or what type person, if this is in play, then that's going to happen and this is where I need to go. You're going to have this if and or what type of way to maneuver. It can really, the abuse is in effect. You have that little game pattern going on in your head because it's been instilled in you. These are things, again, too, I'm back to the 11 signs you are a victim of narcissistic abuse. You walk on eggshells. So number 3, you put aside your basic needs and desires, sacrificing your emotional and even your physical safety to please your abuser. You may once have been full of life, goal-driven, dream-oriented. Now you feel as though you're just living to fulfill the needs and the agendas of another person. Once the narcissist's entire life seemed to revolve around you, now your entire life seems to revolve around them. You may have placed your goals, hobbies, friendships, and personal safety on the back burner to ensure that your abuser feels satisfied in the relationship. Of course, you soon realize he or she will never truly be satisfied regardless of what you do or you don't do. That was number 3, and that's pretty self-explanatory. 4, you are struggling with health issues, somatic symptoms that represent psychological turmoil. You may have gained or lost a significant amount of weight, developed serious health issues that did not exist prior, and experienced physical symptoms of premature aging. The stress of chronic abuse has sent your cortisol levels into overdrive, and your immune system has taken a severe hit, leaving you vulnerable to physical ailments and disease. Berglund, 2013. You find yourself unable to sleep or experiencing terrifying nightmares. When you do, reliving the trauma through emotional or visual flashbacks that bring you back to the site of the original wounds. Walker, 2013. So this young lady's done some research here, but those are 2 points in if you're struggling with health issues or somatic symptoms as a result of psychological turmoil. My experience with that is I didn't sleep for a freaking year after I figured out what the hell was going on. I mean, I would just wake up going, and it was a year. It was a good year, and I was isolated, and yep. Anyway, better now. You develop a pervasive sense of mistrust. Now, this is you develop a pervasive sense of mistrust. Now, you know what? I don't know that you actually develop that mistrust. It just is. It's a mistrust. You're going to mistrust every damn thing. You're going to double, triple check. And as far as where people come, I mean, they're going to earn that. They're going to earn that trust. Every person now represents a threat. And I mean every person will be a threat if you're going through this abusive cycle here. And you find yourself becoming anxious about the intentions of others, especially having experienced malicious actions of someone you once trusted. You let down your guard, you love somebody, they weed their way in, and they fucked you over. Period. Your usual caution becomes hypervigilance. Yeah, used to, you're maybe a little lackadaisical on what people's intentions were towards you. But if you're in the middle of an abuse cycle, that's no longer. You're hyper-vigilant about what their intentions are. Good friends will be patient with you through that, by the way, and continue to do so. Since a narcissistic abuser has worked hard to gaslight you into believing that your experiences are invalid, you have a hard time trusting anyone, including yourself. And my goodness, yes, they do gaslight you to a point to where you're not even sure that you know how to breathe right. You don't even trust yourself to make the right decisions. You don't trust yourself what the next step you're going to make. You flat don't trust. You don't trust. And that will take quite some mending to do. 6, you experience suicidal ideation or self-harming tendencies. Along with depression and anxiety may become an increased sense of hopelessness. Your circumstances feel unbearable as if you cannot escape, even if you wanted to. You develop a sense of learned helplessness that makes you feel like you don't wish to survive another day. You may even engage in self-harm as a way to cope. Dr. McKeon, 2014, chief of the suicide prevention branch at SAM-HSA, notes, victims of intimate partner violence are twice as likely to attempt suicide multiple times. This is the way the abusers essentially commit murder without a trace. After the light gets switched on and you understand this abuse cycle, and that what part you played in it and how it came to be. You'll look back at certain situations along the way. Hindsight's 20/20. And you'll see in certain situations where there's been a loss of life. And this is serious, folks. There is loss of life in this narcissistic trauma abuse, whether it be a psychopath or a sociopath or a narcissist. There is loss of life. That's how serious it is. They really are having hands off. They'll talk somebody into just offing themselves. They'll make life so freaking miserable that these people will off themselves. It's a pretty sad state of affairs. Okay, so number 7, you self-isolate. Many abusers isolate their victims, but victims also isolate themselves because they feel ashamed about the abuse they're experiencing. Given the victim blaming and misconceptions about the emotional and psychological violence in society, let's say that again. Given the victim blaming and the misconceptions about emotional abuse, normally if anybody comes out about being abused in an emotional or a mental abuse situation, most of society will victim blame, meaning, oh, well, you must have signed up for it. Well, you had a choice. You could have gotten out of it. Why did you go back to them? On and on and on. So they will self-isolate. They will hide themselves under this cloak of ashamed abuse. Victims may even be re-traumatized by law enforcement, family members, friends, and the harem members of the narcissist who may invalidate their perceptions of the abuse. So, even if I think that folks give hints when they're in this to others and see if they're picked up on. If they don't get a response that makes them feel that they can trust it. Here we go with that trust thing again. If they can trust them to be helpful without blaming, then they'll isolate. And I'm speaking from experience. I will test waters before I engage, and used to not be that way. Just go right on out there and install boundaries, and until you get all tied up in this, and then you realize that no matter what kind of defense you put into place, it's never enough, because it'll wear over you after time. So they fear no one will understand them, believe them. So instead of reaching out for help, they decide to withdraw as a way to avoid judgment and retaliation from their abuser. See, the abuser has already set it up. If you were to reach out, they're going to already have whoever or whichever way you go set up, meaning that they are going to look at you as the crazy person, or well, really, he was saying this, whatever you come forward with, he's already going to have those I's dotted and those T's crossed, because it's a construct. They've constructed all of this. So here we go. Self-isolation. Number 8, you find yourself comparing yourself to others, often to the extent of blaming yourself for the abuse. A narcissistic abuser is highly skilled at manufacturing love triangles or bringing another person into the dynamic of the relationship to further terrorize the victim. As a result, victims of narcissistic abuse internalize the fear that they're not enough and may constantly strive to compete for the abuser's attention and approval. Victims may also compare themselves to others in happier, healthier relationships, or find themselves wondering why their abusers appear to treat complete strangers with more respect. This can send them down the trap door of wondering, why me? And stuck in the abyss of self-blame. The truth is, the abuser is the person who should be blamed. You are in no way responsible for being abused. You are in no way responsible for being abused. Period. Okay, so that triangulation thing is one fucked up method, I'm telling you. When I'd see the third party coming in all the time, I'm like, this is a real fucked up method. And does it make you question your self-worth? No, for me, it made me question their stupidness. But, yeah, I didn't like coming in second place. I have to say that second place became too comfortable for me. And finally I'd had enough of that. So, it took me a long time to figure it out, though. I'm no quick study on this by any means. If you are wondering if it's you and this person's coming at you in derogatory, devaluing manners, then please look at them. Don't think it's you. You are in no way responsible for their abusive actions. All right, number 9. We have 11, so we're moving along at a pretty good track now. You self-sabotage and self-destruct. Victims also often find themselves ruminating over the abuse and hearing the abuser's voice in their minds, amplifying their negative self-talk and tendency towards self-sabotage. Malignant narcissists program and condition their victims to self-destruct, sometimes even to the point of driving them to suicide. Seen that happen in other relationships. Sad state of affair. I'll go over I'll go over that story. I don't know if we'll have time here or not, but I will. It's light again. That's the only time I get to do these. Due to the narcissist's covert and overt put-downs, verbal abuse, hyper-criticism, victims develop a tendency to punish themselves because they carry such toxic shame. They may sabotage their goals, dreams, and academics pursuits. The abuser has instilled in them a sense of worthlessness, and they begin to believe that they are undeserving of good things. Um, I've seen that. I know a few people that still operate under that heavy umbrella. And it could be misdiagnosed as depression or anxiety, but it's actually a program that's been installed in them that they'll never amount to anything. It goes back to that black sheep scapegoat thing in a family. A person could come out with the self-sabotage, self-destruct personality that was installed in them. Number 10, you fear doing what you love and achieving success. Before I head into these paragraphs, that's when I said I would try to shrink back, keep it low, maneuver around so people didn't see or would come up with the envy thing. Didn't want to envy me, because if they envy, then they're wanting to attach. So, fearing what you're doing to love and achieving success. Since many pathological predators are envious of their victims, they punish them for succeeding. This conditions their victims to associate their joys, interests, talents, and areas of success with cruel and callous treatment. This conditioning gets their victims to fear success lest they be met with reprisal and reprimand. As a result, victims become depressed, anxious, lack confidence, and they may hide from the spotlight and allow their abusers to steal the show again and again. Realize that your abuser is not undercutting your gifts because they truly believe you are inferior. It is because those gifts threaten their control over you. That's a pretty cool sentence, actually. Realize that your abuser is not undercutting your gifts because they truly believe you are inferior. It is because those gifts threaten their control over you. So if you are that in a bag of chips, they don't like that, because then they can't install these mechanisms to control you. And I have to say that for some reason throughout, I kept my confidence, because God allowed me to. God allowed me to keep confidence. So I was able to still have some critical thinking of my own going on to threaten that control. So that threat of control will cause the abuse to increase too, just so you know. Number 11, you protect your abuser and even gaslight yourself. There's that reality check again. Rationalizing, minimizing, and denying the abuse are often survival mechanisms for victims in an abusive relationship. In order to reduce the cognitive dissonance that erupts when a person who claims to love you mistreats you, victims of abuse convince themselves that the abuser is really not all that bad, or they must have done something to provoke that abuse. It is important to reduce this cognitive dissonance in the other direction by reading up on narcissistic personality and abuse tactics. This way you're able to reconcile your current reality with your narcissist false self by recognizing that the abusive personality, not the charming facade, is their true self. Weigh it out. Nice. This much is really a fucked up individual towards you, about this much. You weigh it out. You didn't deserve any of the abuse, okay? You don't ask for any of it. Maybe you're wanting love, which you need to have love. But in this case, this is fake love, fucked up treatment. Fake love, fucked up treatment, okay? Please recognize it. Alright, so here it is. Remember that the intense trauma bond is often formed between a victim and abuser because the victim is trained to rely on the abuser for his or her survival. Carnes, 2015. Victims may protect their abusers from legal consequences, portray a happy image of the relationship on social media, or overcompensate by sharing the blame of the abuse. Gosh, and you'll see that on a lot of shows or movies or even news reports about, oh, he really didn't mean to give me the black eye. Oh, he really didn't mean to break my arm, or he didn't really mean to hold the gun to my head, or Those are abusive maneuvers. Just in case. Love's not supposed to hurt. Okay. So here, her article continues, and I think it's pretty decent. I've been narcissistically abused. Now what? If you are currently in an abusive relationship of any kind, know that you're not alone, even if you feel like you are. There are millions of survivors all over the world who have experienced what you have. This form of psychological torment is not exclusive to any gender, culture, social class, or religion. The first step is becoming aware of the reality of your situation and validating it, even if your abuser attempts to gaslight you into believing otherwise. Get in touch with reality. Admit it. Look at it. Use your critical thinking. If something is going wrong, it's not because you're crazy. It's because somebody's making it go wrong, okay? If you can, journal the experiences you've been going through to begin acknowledging these realities. Share the truth with a trusted mental health professional, domestic violence advocate, family member, friends, or fellow survivors. From my own experience, I would say share it with a trusted mental health professional, domestic violence advocate. Family member and friends may want to hold off unless you're really tight with one of them and they were not going to hold judgment, or they see the abuse going on themselves, or getting with a survival group, fellow survivor. There we go. Begin to heal your body through modalities like trauma-focused yoga and mindfulness meditation. Two practices that target the same parts of the brain are often affected by trauma. Trauma-focused yoga and mindfulness meditation. I did both of these during my last stint with a narcissist. Continually throughout. There's a lot of things I did throughout that kept me probably engaged with that relationship more than I should have. And well, obviously, shouldn't have ever even engaged to begin with. And so, yeah, keeping my sanity. Anyway, so reach out for help if you're experiencing any of these symptoms, especially suicidal ideation. Please call somebody if you want to hurt yourself. Consult a trauma-informed counselor who understands and can help you guide through the symptoms of trauma. Make a safety plan if you have concerns about your abuser getting violent. Alright, make a safety plan. It is not easy to leave an abusive relationship due to the intense trauma bonds that develop. The effects of trauma and the pervasive sense of helplessness and hopelessness can form as a result of the abuse. Yet you have to know that it is in fact possible to leave and begin a journey to no contact or low contact in the case of co-parenting. Recovery from this form of abuse is challenging, but well worth paving the path back to freedom, putting the pieces back together. It is very worth it. It is so worth it. I can't tell you. I mean, a year out of that, I couldn't tell you it was worth it. The year after that, going through some pretty hefty healing and research, I couldn't tell you it was worth it. But I'm not even saying I'm even on the other side of it. But not having that continual bullshit put down stuff coming at you continually over and over and over and over and over, day in, day out, year in, year out, gone, is totally worth it. Thanks for tuning in. This is all I have for today. Maybe a little much, a little wordy, but I am very thankful you tuned in, and you may leave your thoughts and comments at the bottom and hit the like button, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye-bye.